Welcome to video 16 of our English language course. Today, we are going to learn about an essential part of English communication, phrasal verbs. We will focus on phrasal verbs with four common verbs: get, take, put, and make. By the end of this lesson, you'll be able to understand and use these phrasal verbs effectively in your conversations. A phrasal verb is a combination of a verb and one or more particles, prepositions, or adverbs. Together, these words create a new meaning that is often very different from the individual words. For example, the verb get usually means to obtain something. But when we combine it with the word up, it changes the meaning completely to rise, as in get up. This is why phrasal verbs can sometimes be confusing for learners. The key is to understand how the verb and the particle work together to create a new meaning. Phrasal verbs with get are extremely common in English. Let's look at a few important ones. 1. Get up. This means to rise, especially from a bed or a seated position. Example, I get up at 7 a.m. every morning. 2. Get along. This means to have a good relationship with someone. Example, she gets along well with her co-workers. 3. Get by. This phrasal verb means to manage or survive, especially in difficult situations. Example, even with little money, they manage to get by. These phrasal verbs are frequently used in daily conversations, so it's important to be familiar with them. Now let's move on to phrasal verbs with take. 1. Take off. This can mean to remove something, like clothing, or when an airplane leaves the ground. Example, she took off her coat. The plane took off at noon. 2. Take up. This means to start a new activity. Example, he took up painting after retiring. 3. Take over. This means to assume control or responsibility. Example, the company was taken over by new management. These are useful phrasal verbs that you'll encounter in many different contexts. Now let's look at phrasal verbs with a put. 1. Put down. This can mean to place something on a surface or, in another context, to insult someone. Example, she put the book down on the table. He always puts me down. Example, she put the book down on the table. He always puts me down. 2. Put off. This means to postpone or delay something. Example, we had to put off our meeting until next week. 3. Put up with. This phrasal verb means to tolerate or endure something difficult. Example, I can't put up with the noise any longer. These phrasal verbs have very different meanings depending on the context, so it's important to learn how they are used. Finally, let's take a look at phrasal verbs with the make. 1. Make up. This can mean to invent something, like a story, or to reconcile after an argument. Example, she made up a story. They made up after the fight. 2. Make out. This means to decipher or understand something. Example, I can't make out what she's saying. 3. Make up for. This phrasal verb means to compensate for something. Example, I'll make up for missing your birthday. As you can see, phrasal verbs with the make can have multiple meanings, so it's important to learn their different uses. Now that we've gone over these common phrasal verbs, it's time for you to practice. 1. Can you come up with your own sentences using phrasal verbs like get up, take off, put down, and a make up? 2. Try using these phrasal verbs in your conversations today. Remember, practice is key to mastering phrasal verbs. The more you use them, the more comfortable you'll become with their meanings. That concludes our lesson on common phrasal verbs with get, take, put, and a make. Be sure to practice these frequently, and soon they will become a natural part of your English communication. Thank you for joining today's lesson.